Hello and welcome to a live episode of Pop Culture on Deprogram with Keri Smith. This is still a relatively new channel, so if you found your way here by mistake, please hit subscribe. I'm joined tonight by the wonderful, the talented Mystery Chris. Hello, how are you, sir?
Howdy, how are you?
I'm good. One of these nights, you're going to do the intro. I think that would be fun.
That's gonna go terrible.
Yep. And then tonight, we also have another special guest, also behind an avatar. Everybody, welcome. You know him, Comics Division.
Not intentionally, mind you. It's mainly because my camera is refusing to agree with me tonight.
That's totally fine. I think maybe I should switch to an avatar, and then we can all match. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we are going to talk about anime tonight. Chris, you picked this topic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why you chose this one?
Because I know very little about anime. I've seen like a lot of the basic stuff. The Akiras and Ghost in the Shell. Seen the Miyazaki one, Spirited Away. I've seen all that. Most of the stuff I've seen is like robot stuff, Macross Plus and all that. But I don't know.
Robot stuff is the best, man. That's
Yeah, yeah. So I thought it'd be fun just to kind of like talk about it, explore it. I think we both, you and Keri, and on comics, more than both of us combined. But I think we could like do a nice little exploration and talk about all the influences in anime and Japanese culture.
It is becoming a lot more popular. Cole, if you can find that link I sent you on Telegram, just of the market share and how it's growing in the US, the number of people here who are watching anime, buying manga, has been exploding. And so we can look at those numbers if you want, which I think that makes it a little bit relevant. I know more people now. I'm like you, Chris. I've watched things in college, like Ghost in the Shell. I've seen Spirited Away. That's pretty much where I'm at with it. Can you make that a
the
little?
funny thing about it is the reason why people are switching over to manga and anime is because it doesn't suck.
You've said that before, and that's why I asked you to join us tonight, because I want you to make the case for why it doesn't suck. If you guys are just listening on the screen, we have this article that's the US anime market, and you can see, you don't even have to look at the numbers. You can just see it visually represented in a bar graph, how much it's been growing per year. There are more people consuming it. And as you say, comics, you think it's because it doesn't suck. What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, I can tell you, at least from the manga standpoint, manga has been supplanting American comics mainly because the storytelling is just that, it's sticking storytelling, where like Marvel and DC have really been injecting identity politics into their stories. The art is terrible. The writing is terrible. You have a lot of old school comic fans wanting something else. And
manga
slowly
is
but surely,
it's like a comic book.
yeah,
Right?
manga is essentially it's a comic book. It is, you read it from right to left rather than left to right. I'm trying to think of the best way of putting it. A lot of them, they're for the most part, they're kind of like published in what we would call here like the trade format. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically when they're printed, it's usually like in an anthology. You have a bunch of different stories that come out monthly in one book. Yeah. And then, you have like a compilation of the entire volume that gets released. And that's basically kind of their format. Now, the issue, like I said, with American comics, starting, I would say I really started noticing it probably like around I want to say it was 2015. You had All New, All Different with Marvel, where they basically went and replaced all their legacy characters with diversity replacements, and it went over like a bag of hammers. It wasn't very popular. People complained. That's where Comicsgate kind of started in I guess 2017, 2016, 2017. I think is really where it got the worst. And like a lot of old school comic book fans started going to manga because the manga had better stories. The artwork has always been a very specific style, but it doesn't suck. And like I said, you have a lot more compelling stories.
What kind of manga? What kind of manga do you read?
I honestly, I love Ghost in the Shell. Obviously, a lot of people do. It's it's sci-fi, cyberpunk. I freaking love it. I've gone through all those volumes, but I'm also a big fan of the Japanese interpretation of fantasy, like D&D. And it's funny because one of the things that we'll be talking about, Rising of the Shield Hero, kind of covers that a little bit. And it's really kind of funny how like an American comic book on like a D&D property is just that it's D&D, where the Japanese interpretation is like it is D&D essentially, but it's like the rules and the characters and kind of like the behind the scene jokes, like with hit points and stuff like that, is kind of made in the series. I really like that. I'm a big fan of fantasy, which is funny considering I'm not like a huge Lord of the Rings fan like a lot of people I know. But yeah, it's like it's just I really like their take on it. Goblin Slayer is just a really good story. That one gets railed on a lot by the SJWs because of the subject matter. Same thing with Rising. Oh yeah,
goblins are people too.
Yeah, goblins are people too. Trying to think what does Attack on Titan kind of fall under? I'm almost done. I need to go and pick up the final volumes of Attack on Titan, but that one is a really good story.
They made a live action of that, like maybe a few years ago, right? Or am I making that up?
What do you mean?
A live action of Attack on.
Oh yeah. I think they did. I mean, there's a few things out there where they've done. The Japanese are the ones that should be doing the adaptation because they do the material, right?
Right.
They did a live action adaptation of Full Metal Alchemist, which is also a really great series, and of course, there's the Americans who went and tried their own version of Cowboy Bebop, which was good. I could not get through the first 15 minutes of the show. I was just like, I'm done.
No.
What was the worst part of the show?
Oh God. It was just bad. I mean, anime and manga is something that is really, really difficult to adapt to live action. And a lot of it is, it doesn't translate. Something works fine in a cartoon doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate well in live action. And a really good example of this is Ed, who is one of my favorite characters of the series. And she's kind of like this goofy, spastic, over-the-top hacker girl. And that she was like the only character I think that they stayed true to in the series. And it just looked awful. It just looked absolutely awful.
I think so much of it is because that style is so fanciful. Just the way that it's drawn is, you're saying it's hard to do it live action, and it's really different than American style comics. I mean, everybody has big, huge eyes, different colored hair. There's different kinds of non-human characters in a lot of the anime I've seen. And I don't know how you would bring all that to life in a way that doesn't look kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of it?
Let me see if I can find the actual live action photo of Ed. I mean, it looks terrible. It really does. But she's the most accurate out of all the characters in the show, the way she looked. The other thing too is that that really kind of made me mad is that they totally messed with Faye Valentine's character. Faye Valentine, Cowboy Bebop, first off, is a noir story, and Faye is the femme fatale, and they totally messed with her character, and they desexified her, which is a big part of her character, and it's not just because she's that's it right there.
Thanks, Cole. Oh,
it looks awful.
But, little drop dead Freddish.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, I mean, they totally ruined her character. I mean, the whole thing is that Faye is kind of this. She's a person out of time. She's kind of lost, got taken advantage of, and to a certain degree, is probably a bit on the kooky side because of all the bad things that happen to her in the future. But she's an attractive woman, and she knows it, and she uses it to her advantage. And she's got a lot of personality. She kicks a lot of ass. But at the end of the day, I mean, she's just like the other two characters in the story. You know, they're all damaged in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jet was a former cop that ended up losing his job along with his arm. Spike is a former member of the Yakuza who, for the most part, died and also, you know, lost an eye. So you kind of have like these themes of loss, not only just of things that happened to you in the past, but also, you know, physically. Where Faye basically was in an accident and should have died and was basically put on stasis for years. And you know, it's just, you know, all three characters, they're all just, you know, beautifully damaged in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And they all, you know, by the end, you know, the end of the story, they all kind of come to terms with the things that are going on. You know, Faye finally figures out who she is. Jet has to come to terms with, you know, the issues with his wife and, you know, losing his job. And then, you know, on top of that, losing his friends. And, you know, Spike ends up losing his life, or, you know, it's alluded to. It's a fantastic story.
You said you like fantasy, and this sounds like dystopia and like cyberpunk. Are you the one who recommended that we read Neuromancer in book club?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that was so good. Okay.
If you read the entire Sprawl trilogy, it's fantastic. And what I'm finishing reading now is the Takashi Kovacs series, which is basically what you have Altered Carbon. You know, the adaptation pales in comparison to the actual book. I mean, they ruined so much.
I didn't know it was based on a book. Okay.
Yeah. I've owned Altered Carbon for a number of years. It's funny. It's like I own the book. I never read it, and I was like, oh, okay, I got to read these books now.
wait. What is the book called?
Altered Carbon.
Altered Carbon. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the whole idea is that you know, the body that you're in is for the most part kind of disposable, and the thing I like about it is that throughout the three books, Kovacs goes and he has multiple different bodies, because the one he starts off in with Altered Carbon is basically, you could say, it's kind of rented. The body he's in belongs to this San Francisco cop, which they call Bay City now. And in the next one, he is basically a mercenary fighting this war on this other planet, and he's in this Afro-Cuban body, which is very, very similar to what they're trying to do with Anthony Mackie in season 2. And then the third one, which is the final one, that's also where you get into the whole thing with Quellcrest Falconer, who they kind of forced into season 2 and to a certain degree season 1. And again, they completely screw up her story. And it's just, I highly recommend the book series. Book 2 is good. It's not as good as the first one or the third one, but it's definitely worth it. I enjoyed Altered Carbon season 1 for what it was. I mean, it was done pretty well, but like I said, if they actually stuck true to the story from the books, I think it would have been, you know, 10 times better.
And wouldn't that be like a excellent way? Like if Hollywood really wanted to deal with, you know, identity, since that's a big part of, you know, the social justice stuff with, you know, trans and body, you know, dysphoria and stuff.
They kind of
that'd be an excellent way to kind of do that.
Yeah. They do to a degree. Because in the series, there was a character who was in the book, but not really in the book. She's kind of mentioned, but they kind of made her a big part. And the mom gets cross sleeve, which is basically means that if you're a male, you get put into a female body, and vice versa. So I mean, there's definitely some interesting things you can do with it. And the thing I like about it is it gives you the opportunity to kind of swap out your lead, like what they did with Anthony Mackie. I thought he did fine. Just the story for season 2 was garbage.
See, that would have been like so much better for like Star Trek Discovery. You know, I don't know if you've been watching any of that.
No, thank God, no. I watched season 1 of Picard, and I can't bring myself to watch season 2.
Because in season 3, Keri, I don't know if I'm sure we've talked about this, but a trans individual person who's actually trans and a non-binary person, and this trans person lives in the head of the non-binary person, and so there's an arc I put that in quotes, where they get the trans person out of the non-binary's head and put this trans person into a physical body. And there you go. That's the story.
That's the
So
story.
yeah, it's
Star Trek
on the
Discovery?
yes. The Star Trek Discovery, yeah. It's completely on the nose. There's again the whole idea of allegory has just gone completely out the window where they're just doing literal, just taking something, putting it in Star Trek without any kind of thoughtful idea or reducing it to the basic philosophical, idea or principles of it. No, it's just right there in front of you on the nose, ham-fisted.
Well,
I
the
bet
thing I thought was interesting is they actually kind of dealt with the concept of like, gender identity and being non-binary in Next Gen back in the early 90s.
Right.
It was
Norman
done
Riker
so much
falls
better.
in love with that,
Yeah.
non-gendered alien.
Yeah.
It sounds weird, Keri. I know, like
no, I remember you talking about that, and you said that's when it was handled like well
Mhm.
in an
Yeah.
interesting way. And this is sort of force-fed trans ideology. I thought you were going to say that somebody else moved into the head, and then it was like Three's Company and the brain, non-binary. I bet the what do they call it now? Dissociative identity disorder people love that plot line. They're the ones that
Yeah.
believe that they have multiple identities. They used to call it multiple personality.
Multiple
disorder.
personality. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to do a couple of these super chats doing it behind and see if you guys know what this is about. Aiken, why are you going to make me read this? For a change of pace, I recommend Super Cub, and I can't read it. Komi Sanwa. Can you read that, Comix?
Are you kidding? I'm dyslexic.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but thank you for the chat. Do you guys know?
I want to pronounce it in a very offensive accent, but I won't do it.
I think you should.
Kame-sanwa?
Oh no.
Kame-sanwa?
Canceled. Ken, hello Ken. Ken says, please go in depth on the cultural significance of Akira. Do either of you want to take a stab at that?
Okay, so obviously Japan getting nuked has has impacted the country quite a bit, and you could say to a degree Akira kind of deals with that. You see that in, like the same thing with Godzilla, right? This is like the whole thing with weapons of mass destruction. So obviously that is a significant theme to Akira when it comes to weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it starts with Japan getting nuked in World War III. I think it's World War III. It's been a while since I've watched Akira. And then you have, I think it's Kaneda, where he basically kind of becomes a weapon of mass destruction.
So they're kind of obsessed with annihilation.
Yeah.
That actually touches upon one of my articles. This would be a good time to pull that up. Cole, if you could pull up the article that says atomic bomb and anime, please. Because when I was in college, I was speaking to a guy, and I was kind of, discussing what influence went into creating the Japanese culture, and his theory was that, the atomic bomb obviously had an impact. But
absolutely.
Saying that it was, primarily the thing that kind of made things weird.
Thank you, Tetsuo. That's right. It was Tetsuo. Kaneda is the main character.
Yeah. If you could scroll down to the break where it says orphan and mutants, please.
Is that big enough for you to read?
Cool. Yeah, yes.
Chris?
I've also pulled it up on my browser.
Okay, cool.
So I'm just going to read just a little bit. So says, there were also after effects of the bomb, some which are still felt today. Children left parentless, others, even the unborn, left permanently crippled by radiation. For these reasons, a recurrent theme in anime films is the orphan who has to survive on his own without the help of adults, many who are portrayed as incompetent. Akira Nusaka relayed his personal experiences as a child during the war in the popular anime film The Grave of the Fireflies, which tells the story of a young boy and his sister escaping from air raids and the firebombs, scrapping by on whatever rations they could find during the last part of the war. And then it goes down, likewise, in Katsuryo Automoto's Akira, the adults are the ones who are squallable. They jockey for power. They lust for control of the strange. Alien technology of Akira causes the atomic bomb-like catastrophe at the end of the film. The teenage characters, on the other hand, display common sense throughout the movie. The message seems to be that adults can be reckless with man's desire for power and ambition, and ambition outweigh what is important on Earth, and the children, still untainted by the vices that overtake humanity in adulthood and innocent enough to the point of thinking rationality, are the ones who end up making the most practical decisions overall.
Wow,
And it goes on, but yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That
It's a good one. I highly recommend it. I would honestly recommend watching the version from the 80s before they went and redubbed it back in 2000.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. I just well, Saban has an. I don't remember who released it. I know that Saban has a nasty habit of doing stuff like that. But
Oh, it's the Power Rangers, folks.
yeah.
You mean watching it with the subtitles rather than the dubbing?
Well, no, I mean because it was dubbed in the 80s when it came out in the US, and they ended up redubbing it. I want to say in the 2000s. Because I went and I watched it. I was like, wow, this doesn't sound right. And so yeah, they ended up redubbing it.
So I wonder if they're gonna like start redubbing movies to be more diverse. Like I can seriously see them doing that.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring that up because they have been doing that with.
I knew it.
Yeah, we the whole thing with wokeness. I mean, to degree, you're right. Is I'm not gonna say anything is really kind of not worth, but bulletproof when it comes to wokeness. There has been incidents where things have tried to creep in, and they've been going after manga for years at this point. You had one of the manga creators say, "Well, maybe we should give into this." And then obviously there's others who are like, "No." But you're seeing a lot of it with the dubbing companies here in the United States, specifically Funimation. They want to start injecting a lot of stuff in. And then you have Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll, which is really funny because they were great because they had this large library of anime that people can get a hold of. That was how I finished watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is a actual faithful adaptation of the manga, which is just amazing. And they had all this money that they were getting, and they decided that they're going to go and create their own woke anime. And it went over like a bag of dicks.
I actually, in preparation for this episode, I was looking up stuff about anime, and I stumbled across 2 different Reddit threads. One of the Reddit threads was like, "Leave my anime alone, you wokest," and it was just this whole rant, right? The other Reddit thread was a woke person that's like, "Hey guys, does anybody know where I can find any anime that's woke?" And I think
the funny thing is, like, what really kind of spawned a lot of this stuff back in, I guess it was 2019, was Rising of the Shield Hero when that came out. That spawned 1,000 articles because the lead character in it gets accused of rape, falsely accused of rape, by the way. And everybody kind of lost their shits, I mean, because this is like right after Me Too at this point, and it launched 1,000 articles about how awful the anime is, and I picked it up last year on DVD because I couldn't get a hold of it on Blu-ray. Watched the entire series, and it was great. It was wonderful, and the thing that is kind of lost on it. These idiots is the idea of what happens. You have the genre with an anime where somebody goes to like a fantasy realm or in the past or in another kind of like quote unquote dimension. So I can't remember the actual term for it. Chris, you might remember the term. But it's a style or a genre where somebody gets displaced, like Inuyasha. Kagome goes into the past. But in the series, he goes into this other world, which is kind of like it feels like they're playing a MMORPG because the rules of the world is like an MMO. And so he becomes the shield hero, and these 3 other individuals are kind of brought back with him from other areas. So you basically have the spear hero, the sword hero, the bow hero, and the shield hero, and everybody hates the shield hero. So they basically get trained up and are supposed to go out and select a party and go stop these cataclysmic events. Well, what happens is that the king's daughter, who basically says, "I want to be on your team," kind of sets him up and accuses him of rape. And it destroys him. He's like, just super excited to be here, wants to help everybody. And what it does is it takes him from kind of being bright-eyed and rosy-cheeked, and it makes him this total cynical asshole because at this point everybody hates him because he's been accused of raping the king's daughter. And so he has to go off and kind of venture off on his own. And the reason why it's called the Rising of the Shield Hero is because he's got knocked down to this, to the lowest of the low. And even though he's become cynical and jaded, he still kind of goes out of his way to help people. And it's about him kind of realizing his own self-worth and becoming an actual hero.
I love this storyline.
It is a fantastic story.
It's like, what a great storyline to learn how to deal with everyone believing something untrue about you, the worst about you, and being okay with that because you know who you are and staying true to yourself. If he's still helping people despite being kicked down to the bottom.
He does it begrudgingly because he's
right.
Kind of, like I said, he's cynical and jaded. And I love what I think it's Lieutenant Silver says. It destroyed his love of life while in Melormac, I think it's the world. But yeah, I mean, he basically kind of like loses his drive, his love of life, and it destroys him as a person. And it's kind of like, and he ends up finding Raftalia, who is she's like an animal person. She's like part raccoon, and she's a slave. So he finally, nobody wants to work with him. There's like a few people in town that will go and help him out. And so he goes and buys this slave girl, Raftalia. He's like, I need help, so I'm going to train you. And so throughout the series, it's about their relationship and their friendship. And as Raftalia levels up, she starts off as this girl and then levels up and becomes like a 21-year-old. And then I guess, again, this is like the rules of the world, is that, they are leveling up like a D&D character or an MMO character. And so her leveling up is that she becomes more of an adult. With him leveling up, he basically expands his shield powers, and it's done very well. And like I said, it's a great, kind of hero's journey. It's about this guy, starting from zero, everybody's spitting on him, and then finding a way to kind of actually become a hero.
Let me guess. So the woke said that they that it was encouraging the trope. They would probably say it was a trope that rape accusations are false.
Yep.
Okay.
Spot on, Keri.
And they probably also said it's support slavery.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they had a problem with that, and they also had a problem with the fact that I don't know if maybe they didn't have, but yeah, like the whole thing, it had slavery in it. They didn't like that. They didn't, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, but primarily it was the false rape accusation that never happens in the real world.
Which does happen in the real world. Let me ask you a question. So when I found that Reddit, I found one of those Reddit threads, and one of them, it was the woke person saying, "Where can I find anime that supports social justice and cares about oppression?" And
Cartoon Network.
One of the replies to that thread said, "Oh, it's really tough because anime is very conservative." Is conservative how you would describe?
No, not in the least. I mean, we briefly talked about hentai before going live. I mean,
that's the only kind I know.
We did.
I would not consider that to be conservative in the least. But I mean, it's just not. It's not politically correct, is what it is. And of course, people associate that with being conservative. I mean, there's a lot of tropes within anime and manga. And a lot of those kind of tropes kind of translate over to the different genres of anime and manga. Like again, I can't remember the Japanese term for it, but there's also a type of anime and manga where typically there's like a boy or a young man, and there's a lot of women, and all of the women are attracted to the guy, but he's oblivious. And also kind of works reverse too for like a girl and a bunch of guys. But Tenchi Muyo is a really good example of that, which is again another really great OAV series.
So basically, just like any sort of genre, there's all these subgenres based on what you're interested in. So you can read the more like cyberpunk, futuristic, dystopia kind of stuff, or you can read the porn stuff. Or you can read.
I mean, you don't read it. I mean, you don't read it necessarily. Oh. They have manga that's dedicated to cooking, and this is like really popular stuff. And this stuff outsells American comics. It's about freaking cooking, or about baseball. I mean, if you have an interest in something, there is a manga for you.
Gardening?
Probably.
Yeah, I believe that. Let me see. Oh, go ahead.
I
I love
had
how
a
everyone's like throwing out what stuff is actually called. But like I said, I'm not a weeb. I do enjoy anime. I'm semi knowledgeable in it, but I don't know all the terms.
so I have an article. Cole, if you could click on that first article, it's just the link. It says woke anime at the end, please. So this article is written by somebody who thinks that the woke stuff is good. It was written in 2018. I have not seen any of the shows that are mentioned in this link, in this article. So people in the chat, please tell me if you agree with this person's assessment or not. But let's see. I'm gonna start reading, and then there it goes. Cool, thank you. Okay, so this here goes. Stay Woke has been floating around for some time now, ranging from the Erykah Badu song Master Teacher in 2008 to the police brutality that cost Trayvon Martin in 2012 and Michael Brown 2014. Their lives, the term when used properly and not in a joking manner, symbolizes healthy paranoia, especially surrounding issues involving race, social, and political justice. The idea circulating term woke has since then progressed to bring light to racial discrimination and thrived as a rallying cry for modern civil rights movement. Being woke, according to Urban Dictionary, means society needs to be more aware in current affairs and political environments regarding all demographics and social.
That's not what it means.
No, it doesn't.
So this person goes in. Anime lovers in the past few years have banded together to join anime fandom and social justice activism. Non-profit organizations such as Anime for Humanity and Woke Weebs curate events and discuss varying issues of sexism, racism, ableism, and mentalism through anime. I haven't heard that one. That one got me. I'm like,
I think it's called being a mentalist. It's called
mentalism.
Mentalism. Actually, that's a new one for me too. I know they've pulled mental health and justice under the umbrella, but I've never heard mentalism.
Neurodivergence is what they're calling it.
Okay.
Anyway, so it says that through anime. These woke anime fan groups have developed into community organizations that bring anime fans, community leaders, and industry professionals together to meet, connect, and collaborate. So let's see. Going on, it says Anime for Humanity acknowledges that anime characters often depict mental illness such as narcolepsy, autism, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and various forms of mental illness. These characters are not the black sheep of the shows either. They are often the protagonists and the most lovable character for the fans. This creates a safe environment for those dealing with such struggles and makes them not feel like their disability is a burden that leaves them empty and alone and ostracized. Anime for Humanity also initiate these conversations, opens up channels for dialogue, normalizes mental illness with these communities. And blah, blah, blah. It goes on. I'll skip down here. Numerous of the anime shows, such as Death Note, Duranara, Aggress to Koro, Paranoia Agent, and many more have storylines centralized on such social issues in order to spark a conversation by depicting these sensitive topics.
Wait. Death Note? Really? What the hell are they getting at? Is that because L is kind of quirky?
See, this person says Death Note focuses on social justice through the use of his mystical notebook.
Oh my god, that is not social justice. That is absolute. I mean, Death Note is good, by the way. It is great. No, that is about megalomania and having a god complex. Because at the end of the day, Light Yagami is, he ends up becoming a sociopath, and he basically believes that he can go and kill all the bad people out there and force people to be good. And I mean, I guess to a degree, you could say, yeah, that's exactly how a SJW would act if they had that kind of power. L is definitely kind of on the spectrum, I would say, but God, I mean, for them to just kind of equate it to social justice is like, you're fucking full of shit. And if it was, it's not going to be on your side, because you could say definitely Light Yagami would be a social justice warrior. Because that's exactly what a social justice warrior would do if they had the book.
Oh, jeez.
It sounds like wishful thinking, like they just kind of want it to be like whoever wrote this is like let me see anything I can. Like sometimes they go searching for oppressions and things they want to call out, but they also go searching for heroes or woke allies where they don't exist. To try and shore up support.
Yep.
Well, I mean, they could take anything and, apply any kind of theory to it, one of those critical theories of some sort, and arrive at the conclusion that they started with, that it's racist, sexist, whatever. Because I was joking around once. I think I may have even told you. I was joking at how they read stuff, like people go to college and they get indoctrinated and all that stuff, and they find old pieces of literature and movies, film, and start reading narratives of racism and sexism in it. So I was joking around once. I go, I was thinking of a movie. The first one in my head, I go, Alien. So how about the Gordon Levitt Alien movies? That's racist because it is a giant black alien with a giant black penis on its head that's chasing a tiny white woman running through the ship. It symbolizes the white man's fear of black sexuality. And I kid you not, 3 weeks after I was saying this to someone, I saw an article where some black professor somewhere was writing an article how Aliens was racist, and not just Aliens, Predator too. And that was obvious, the dreadlocks.
Well, it's funny that you
cultural
say that,
appropriation.
considering that the guy who was wearing the alien suit was black.
That's right. He was also in, I believe it's the same one who played, or the guy who played Alien was black, and Predator was black. And I think the guy who played Predator was also Harry and Harry and the Hendersons. And so that's racist because they have the black guy being a giant monkey.
Oh my gosh. I bet this is a fun game to play, by the way. We should play this one night. You can pick anything like that, like the movie Alien, and do an online search for racist.
Oh yeah, you can pick any topic. you can Google how candy is racist. I shit you not. I found an article on how candy is racist.
Candy.
Yeah, seriously, because sugar plantations.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where they took it to. Yeah, it's great. I mean, if you can think it up, odds are there is an article written about how that such and such thing is racist.
It's already it's already out there. I'm gonna do just a couple more of these real quick, Chris. Is that cool?
Yeah.
William. Thank you, William Owens, says also the price point of manga is a big part. $10 for a good amount of content, where an American comics are only a few pages for the same price or more.
Yeah, American comics have gotten really expensive. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the thing that's kind of funny about manga is, they basically kind of still print on pulp, where American comics have gotten like really fancy.
Super fancy.
Super fancy. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where, when I was a kid collecting comics, I used to get G.I. Joe, and it was like 35 cents, a book. Now you're looking on average, probably paying about $5. And you could buy a novel for $5, $6. And I'm like, why am I paying $5 for a book that is basically garbage?
Yeah. They should go back to pulp. It makes me think of like they're trying to be the
that's what Alterna does.
They're trying to be the records or like the LPs of internet. People pay a high price point to get an album today on a record because it's sort of nostalgia and and it sounds better and like let's go back to that. But I can't see paying that much for this. Analogy is falling totally flat. Never mind.
Kevin, gets worse now. There's comic books out there that are $9, dude. $9 freaking dollars.
Yeah. Well, so I used to read Walking Dead, and I would read the what did you call them when they put them in a book all together? The trades.
Trades, yeah.
So they got very expensive because I started to where I didn't want to buy the little single issues anymore, and so I would wait until they put them in those big bound books, and they're quite expensive. But it makes me think of like buying a record because it's an expensive product that you're getting, and you're right. When we were kids, they would just print it on like trash paper.
Yep. Well, and the funny thing about it is most modern comic books, I mean, that like the big thing is that everyone's like, there's the whole issue with the speculator market and the fact that if you go out and buy a $5 comic book and then go and resell it like at a used bookstore, you're getting paid pennies on the dollar for it. I mean, it's like you might get 50 cents for it. I mean, they are literally not worth the paper they're printed on these days. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, there's zero collectability. I mean, just with how poorly written they are,
Yeah.
With the way how bad the art is and how terrible the storylines are, and it's filled with ideology. Nobody wants to collect this
Nobody
shit.
wants them.
Nobody
No.
wants it. I when I moved to my new house, I legit sold almost every single issue of All New, All Different. And this is probably like a good. I don't remember how long it ran. It was like a year or two, but I sold 3 years worth of comics, and I would say it was probably maybe $300. No, it was worth more than that. It was probably like $500 worth of comics. I got $30.
Wow, you'd get a better return on Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
What if these comics become like super like expensive and worth something because they're so bad? You're like, hey, remember that time when people were obsessed with race and gender and were flipping all these characters around?
Well, maybe they'll be worth
Actually-
something years later because of how rare they've become. I mean, that's the reason why comics became worth money to begin with, right? Is because the fact that they were printed on disposable paper. Nobody took care of it. They got thrown out, stuff like that. You had Wortham in the 50s. So there was a lot of stuff that got destroyed. And what did survive was worth money. I mean, it's the reason why, X-Men #1 and like 0.5 condition, which is shitty condition for a comic book, can sell for $1,000.
I think you're onto something, Mystery Chris, because I do think the woke ideology is explicitly racist and sexist and all of these things it claims to be fighting. It is those things. And at some point, if we win the culture wars, if things turn around, it might increase in value because, like, yeah, if you're looking back and you're saying, remember that awful time in history. It's just sort of the way when you go to thrift stores now, there's always that section of like the old racist knickknacks and doodads and stuff.
Wait, where's that?
What?
I've never seen that.
Like the mammies and all the like salt and pepper shakers and things like that. You should help me decorate my kitchen. I kind of want to just get a bunch of old racist art and not say anything about it, and just when people come in and they're like,
well, you've seen that sign in my kitchen where it's like a black guy with some syrup and goes, "This sure am good." That's hilarious.
That's what I'm talking about. Racism. That stuff is worth a pretty penny now because it's sort of
and you're right, Chris. It is funny, but people look at that and they're like, "Oh my god, you must destroy it because of how awful it is." It's like, okay, whatever. It's a piece of history. It's a reminder of the shit that happened, right?
And
we can all have a good laugh at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it exactly. It's like you don't want to forget that time that happened. So whenever I see that stuff in the thrift shops, I'm like, oh gosh, somebody should put that in a museum. Ken Lipson, $5. Thank you, sir. Says also, can comics discuss the significance of 80s morning anime like Star Avengers and Guy King? Is that right?
Oh my god! A lot of the stuff I watched when I was younger, and a lot of the stuff kind of started back in the 70s, right? Because they would take an anime series and they would it started way back longer than that, 60s with I'm totally blanking. Speed Racer being one, and there's the kid that was the kind of the robot with the jet legs. I'm totally blanking.
Astro Boy.
Astro Boy, thank you. So a lot of that kind of started in the 60s, and of course when I was younger, I mean, Astro Boy and Speed Racer were in syndication. So I was watching Speed Racer in the 70s. And they also had what is called here initially it was called Battle of the Planets, and in Japan it was called Gatchaman. And it was funny because I remember even as a kid watching Battle of the Planets, going, the villain's a woman. Why does that character look like a woman? But it was voice dubbed as a man. But it was actually the character really was a woman. I'm trying to remember. And then in the 80s, okay,
that's real sexism, by the way.
Yeah,
why is that man so pretty? Damn it.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. That is like legit sexism. In the 80s, you had Robotech. And
yes,
Robotech, which is comprised of 3 different anime series. The first one being Macross, which is Macross, and then you have Southern Cross, which I don't remember what that one's called. Same thing with what it was their next generation. shit, until I'm blanking. I think it maybe was called Southern Cross in the original, but anyway, that was great. Okay, that was really my gateway into anime. Is I freaking loved Robotech, and I mean it was so hard to get a hold of, and they put it on at really bizarre hours. I mean, I remember when I was in high school getting up at like 6 a.m. Mospeada, thank you. That was the third one was Mospeada. I was getting up at 6 a.m. before school to go watch Robotech on TV because that's when they aired it, 6:30 in the freaking morning. And I would go and record it. Invid Invasion, yeah, I loved that. Honestly, the third one is, I would have to say, probably my favorite because I just love I just love it. I love all three, but Invid Invasion.
I never even heard of this one. I'm looking it up right now. 1985.
It was someone out there who knows something and is not suffering from strained brain. Who translated the Robotech series?
The show was adapted.
Metro was it Metro Golden Mare? No, it wasn't Metro Golden Mare. It was Golden Harmony.
Harmony Gold.
Harmony Gold. There we go. Harmony Gold is what basically brought it to America, and they did it as a like all good 80s cartoons as a means to sell toys. Mm-hmm. Even though their toys were kind of garbage, but it was that
was a special time.
Yeah,
all the TV shows were just basically long adverts for the toys.
Yeah, basically. And then you get into like the 90s with Dragon Ball Z, and Pokemon and all this other stuff. But you also had back in the 80s Go 13, which is the movies were great. Some very adult anime, by the way. Trying to remember what else was I watching. Lodos Wars was another thing I was watching. So this is funny. So there's this guy in San Antonio named Ben Dunn. I think Ben Dunn is actually. Yeah. I don't remember Ben Dunn is actually Japanese or Korean or Chinese, but he had family. Maybe he's Japanese. I don't remember. I have to look into it. But he had family in Japan, and they would go and send him stuff. And he would actually go and play the undubbed, unsubbed anime on public access.
What?
Yeah. It was great.
Was it filthy?
No.
Oh, okay.
Lodos Wars, again, it is more fantasy. It's okay. It has elves and sorcery and priests, and it's very D&D like. And I'm trying to remember what else he did. So that was my introduction to Lodos Wars, and that was like early 90s. I see people bring up Ninja Scrolls, which is the movie is great. The series, the anime series, I didn't think was as good, but the movie was fantastic. Vampire Hunter D is good. But now you have all this stuff like Samurai Champloo, which is great, which is kind of this mixture of I think it was like Edo era. It takes place in the Edo era, but they have like hip hop music.
Okay.
It's
please tell me it's like Japanese people rapping. Please.
Yeah. I mean, they're all Japanese,
awesome.
But it's just like the soundtrack is kind of hip hoppy. It's great. Oh yeah, someone also brought up Star Blazers.
Star Blazers, which I'm obsessed with Star Blazers, but here's the thing: I've never actually seen the episode because I always I'm a huge World War II buff, and so the Yamato, I love the battleship, and I always loved how in the story they took this old battleship and make it into a space cruiser. And I actually watched the movie. Japan made a live action movie of Star Blazers like a decade ago. I think it's on YouTube right now for free. But I enjoyed that, and so I need to watch the whole series.
Well, what was great is that back in the 2000s, you had Adult Swim and Toonami on Cartoon Network, and Toonami got the licenses for a bunch of really good anime series. So obviously they got Inuyasha, they got Cowboy Bebop, which was really kind of my gateway into Bebop, which is to me one of the pinnacle series. Everybody if you're a fan of anime or you want to get into anime, you have to watch Cowboy Bebop because it's so freaking good. I'm trying to remember what else they were doing.
Did they have Gundam Wing?
They had Gundam Wing. Gundam Wing is good. I actually own all Gundam Wing on DVD. And eventually they started playing the original Gundam series. trying to remember what else they were doing. People also bring up Sailor Moon, which has been around for a long time. Yeah, Galaxy Express 999 is that also. Trying to remember which universe that takes place in too. But yeah, shit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there that I've forgotten.
That kind of the groundwork for where we're at now.
Trigun was also on not Adult Swim, but Toonami, and that is another phenomenal series. Oh my god, so good.
Can I pull up? I wanted to switch gears for a second, if now's a good time. You were talking about culturally, like Japan's history with war and how that kind of influenced some of the anime, and this fascination with weapons of mass destruction and annihilation. I want to talk about the sexual ones because I kind of want to get into a little bit about Japanese culture and why there is that, like, certain not that I think Japan is any more sexually frustrated or sexually confused or what have you, or over the top than the US. It's just different. It just expresses itself in a different way. Somebody in the chat said I looked lost a second ago. I'm sorry, I was. I'll like get back to the name of the shows. I don't know, but I want to talk about this for 1 second. Can you bring up this article, Cole? It's the one that was the college article I sent you on Telegram, and it was about this guy who took a trip. Took a trip to Japan, and he's talking about just the different ways that you see sexuality expressed there. And I wanted to read some of this to you and get your take on it. Have you been to Japan? Comix?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I mean, I used to date a Japanese girl in college, but
that counts.
I do Google Earth.
Yeah, actually, this is a really cool thing I learned from Mystery Chris.
Yeah, you can have a vacation at home. Just do a Google Earth thing, drop yourself in the middle of Tokyo, get some sushi, put on some J-pop, you're good.
He actually, like, to visit places he wants to visit, he'll go on Google Earth, and then he will, like, put on the music from the place and stuff, and then just, like, tool around the city and look at all the streets and everything.
Yeah, best part is I ain't wearing no pants.
The article, Cole, it's the Varsity Online piece. Well, while you're pulling it up, I'm going to read just a little bit from this. Oh, wait. Maybe the link didn't work. Maybe that's why. I see. Oh, wait, here it is. Land of the Rising Sun, Sexuality in Japan. So this is a person writing from the UK. And so first they talk about the United Kingdom, and then they get into what it was like visiting Japan. So they say, walking around the streets of Japan, it appears to be an openly sexual nation with an evident erotic culture. Pornography is visually available throughout Japan. The shopping alleys of Osaka are lined with explicit sex shops open in the daytime, neighboring popular karaoke places and restaurants. While a sexually liberated society is certainly something to be celebrated, there are more problematic issues at hand here. By the way, this is a woke person writing this. Just keep that in mind. There are more problematic issues at hand here. Many aspects of Japan's famous erotic world encourage mo, or in other words, a fetish for the hyper-feminine, innocent, and even childlike character who is so often seen in manga, and particularly in its pornographic form, so-called hentai. You don't have to look far to see this. The countless convenience stores in Japan have erotic magazines openly on display depicting manga girls in school uniforms. Furthermore, it cannot be forgotten that possession of child pornography was only banned in Japan in 2014, and that pornographic manga depicting minors that are catered towards the pedophilic lolicon and shotacon fetishes is still legal today. While I am in no way suggesting that every part of Japan's sexual society is disturbing to this extent, it cannot be denied that Japan's sexual openness is certainly a controversial topic. And yet at times, it seems that sexuality is more hidden in Japan than it is in Britain. We have become accustomed to sex playing a mundane role in the media. Game of Thrones frequently uses sex as a literal backdrop to the central conversation or action of the scene. While sex scenes are, of course, present in Japanese television and film, it does not seem to have this same function of being placed into the plot for the sake of it, but usually only if it is relevant to the storyline. Japanese dramas often seem to build romances in such a way that a kiss is as much of a turning point in a character's relationship as a sex scene would be. And these love stories are more like modern fairy tales than anything. Television with real people does not seem to portray the same sexual explicitness or experimentation that is seen in fantasy forms such as manga. Women celebrities acting as real representatives of the Japanese female population do not appear to have the opportunity to standardize everyday female sexuality. Okay, I'm almost done. I just want to get your take on this last paragraph. What represents this paradoxical concept of sexual frankness alongside sexual privacy is Japan's ongoing chikan, pervert problem. This usually refers to women being groped and on packed public transport. The act has even become a popular feature in Japanese pornography. Signs reading "Beware of Chikan" are dotted around the cities, and some train lines provide women-only carriages during rush hour. This is something I've heard a lot about, how creepers on trains and stuff will like take photos of women's legs and try to get like photos of like up the skirt or whatever, that it's a common thing that happens. I mean, I know that
it's happened in New York. You had the whole thing back in the day with upskirting, right? I mean, that was like a big thing for a while.
I mean, I've seen some gross stuff on New York subways too. So Japan's not alone.
I don't think it's exclusive, but there is some context that needs to be put around some of that. So the big thing too is, and again, chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe the age in consent in Japan is 13. So that obviously I think kind of explains a lot of that. And again, I'm speaking purely from an anthropological standpoint or anthropological
standpoint. Right, trying to understand it, right?
Yeah. By no means do I, as a Westerner,
you're right.
Condone a lot of stuff. Okay, so someone's saying it's 16, not 13, but a lot of the stuff that when it comes to age of consent is very much cultural based, and yes, we are very much used to cultural norms in the West. But yeah, there are definitely other cultures that, for the most part, really kind of don't exist anymore, where it was very much different, where you had a very young woman, typically age 13, being married to a much older man. So that is that happened even in the United States to a degree too. Like my grandmother, I want to say that she was like 15 and married to my grandfather, and I think he was well into his 20s. But that's something that is no longer as common. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the Japanese schoolgirl thing is a thing in Japan, and it's because their age of consent is so low.
I didn't know that. People in the chat are saying it's 60. Am I still dropping frames? People said I'm dropping.
Yeah, you're dropping frames a little bit. Yeah, I saw. Yeah, it's 16 is what they I got corrected on, but I knew it was low.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing that it changed. What I'm seeing is at 13, Japan's base age of consent is the lowest of any developed country.
Is it? However, so it is 13. I was right. Okay. Right.
Yeah, it says, however, many prefectures also have local corruption of minors or obscenity statutes, which raise the de facto age of consent to 16, unless they are in a, quote, sincere romantic relationship, which is usually determined by the parents.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, it definitely, cultural norms shift as we figure out things like, hey, murder's wrong. And slavery's wrong. And hey, maybe a 13-year-old, maybe that's too young. But the norms here weren't always what they are. I mean, I remember being shocked to find out, was it Great Balls of Fire? What's his name?
Jerry Lee Lewis.
No,
Jerry Lee Lewis. Yeah. Didn't he marry a 13-year-old? I mean, it was, I think that was more common back then. I mean, even Elvis, when he started dating Priscilla, she was pretty young.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that has something to do with it. I don't know. I would love to talk to somebody from Japan to talk a little more about like how it has influenced anime to this degree, where you see like all this sort of more infantile looking girls with, like I said, like the big eyes, and you see some of that now in American animation with
big eyes is basically a reflection of innocence. And that is very much, you can see that within manga and anime, is that typically the wiser or more world weary you are, the kind of like smaller your eyes are, where to be young and youthful and inexperienced, you tend to have like large big eyes, because you have not really seen the world for what it is yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for taking us in that direction. I know we were having a good
No, that's
time
fine.
before.
I'm gonna bring it up some because that took a dark turn.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Keri, cool.
Well, that's a
But
part of it. That's what I think. That's what I usually think of when I think of
yeah,
anime.
it's very much a cultural thing, and that's the other thing too that you have to understand about Japan is, Japan for the most part, it is an ethno state, right? I mean, it's they are very scared of foreigners. I had a coworker, and this is like I wouldn't say too long ago. It was like 2012, and he went to Japan, and he's a white guy. He's talking about how he was walking down the streets, and you'd have people that would go and cross the street. I mean, Japan is, for the most part, still pretty xenophobic, but
yeah, they hate Chinese people.
yeah,
Well, do you think
that too?
I have a question. Do you think that's why? So some people think, and I have an article if we want to look through it, but I found a few articles where people said, manga and anime will never become woke. It won't. The Japanese culture can't tolerate woke. And do you think part of that is because so much of woke is centered around this Western idea of somehow Western values being a part of white supremacy?
Possibly. I was aware there was one. I think it was a manga creator, basically saying, "Yeah, we should do what they say, what the Americans are complaining about." And I don't know if they will ultimately capitulate. I think really kind of the back door is basically these translation companies that are here in the United States. That is where I think they might get them, even if it doesn't go to Japan. The Americans will wokeify the anime here. That's all. That's very much a possibility. If we can't force you to do it, we'll just do it here, and they'll work it in some
The
form or
American
fashion.
version. But how
Yeah.
much sense would it make in Japan to be talking about white privilege and white supremacy?
Well,
I mean, you're in
a lot of that
yeah,
it's more of the feminism aspect, and
yeah.
just kind of the stuff that we talked about with the whole thing with young girls and stuff like that. I mean, there is that kind of influence, and you have to understand too. A lot of the like I said, a lot of the girls that people are complaining about are of age in Japan, like Yuko-chan. She's like this girl with short hair and big tits. Looks, I think she's supposed to be about 18 or so in the anime. I don't or manga. I don't know what she's from. But that was like that's something that they always bring up. The SJWs always complain about is Yuka-chan.
Somebody
Zuka-chan. Okay.
Darren says woke has irritated Japan so much it's become a congressional issue. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. If you can drop a link in the chat, I'd be very curious to see what you're talking about. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on, Mystery Chris?
Yeah, I want to talk about giant robots.
Robots.
Yeah, I've always loved robots, American robots, Japanese robots, any kind of robot I love. So I found this article on Wired, and you don't have to pull this up, Cole. I'm going to read a paragraph of it, but it talks about this person's kind of giving their theory as to why Japan loves robots so much and why the West fears it. And so this person put in a paragraph that quotes the creator of Atom Boy. So I just want to read this paragraph real quick, and then I want to show a video. So it goes, the general idea that Japanese accept robots far more easily than Westerners is fairly common these days. Osamu Tezuka, the Japanese cartoonist and creator of Atom Boy, noted the relationship between Buddhism and robots, saying, Japanese don't make a distinction between man, the superior culture, and the world about him. Everything is fused together, and we accept robots easily along with the wide world around us. The insects, the rocks, it's all one. We have none of the doubting attitude towards robots as pseudo-humans that you find in the West. So here you find no resistance, simply quiet acceptance. And while the Japanese did, of course, become agrarian and then industrial, Shinto and Buddhism influences have caused Japan to retain many of the rituals and sensibilities of more pre-humanist period.
Oh, that's interesting because I read something about how Japanese culture, specifically you're talking about Buddhism and how it influences a lot of the storylines, and also it was saying that as a result that a lot of the shows tend to be more collectivist in nature, where as American shows tend to be more individualist hero, like there's one hero who saves the day. And they were making the argument that anime, Japanese anime, is more groups of people learning how to work together to save the day.
Yeah, it is, I would say. But that again, that's cultural. It's the same thing you could say with Europe. Europe is also very collectivist. America, I would say, we're probably a little more on the unique side, where we very much value, for the most part, individuality and individualism over collectivism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the interesting things I've always loved about Japanese culture, because you had this culture that developed in the East, largely outside the influence of Western powers up until the end of World War II, where they lost.
Yep.
And then suddenly you have the Western powers and a lot of corporations and capitalism come in, and it melded with the culture that was already there to make this weird, unique culture. Because like I've always found Japan and a lot of those Far Eastern countries more interesting than European countries. Like I'm not trying to sound offensive, but it always seemed more alien in a sense, because so much of our own culture here in America comes from Europe. You know, so much of the architecture and the art, the political systems, there are a lot more similarities between us and Europe than between us and Japan. And so I was always just fascinated, particularly by their obsession with like I was saying earlier, with robots and technology and the progression of society through technology. And like the article was hinting about, how they don't tend to really fear that progression of technology the way that some Americans and some of us in the West do.
Well, the thing is so interesting about Japan, I mean, for the most part, I mean, they lived in a feudalistic society up to like the late 1800s, when you had the West start showing up. And then you had this Western influence kind of like coming in, and eventually they kicked all the Westerners out. And at that point, they realized that for them to compete on the world stage, they had to rapidly industrialize, which ultimately led to what happened with World War II. Was because of that, that nationalism that they had, and the rapid industrialization. I mean, it's like, yeah, sure, they had trains, but for the most part, most people, I mean, and it's really great because a lot of these anime series, like Demon Slayer, kind of captures this dichotomy of, you have trains and industrialization going on, but for the most part, most people are still living like they've been living for hundreds of years, which is in this very kind of feudal society.
Cole, if you could bring up a video, and the email I sent you says Gundam video, could please bring that up. I want to see Comix if you've seen this before. I mean, it's been around for a while, so you probably have, but I'm sure Keri hasn't, and other people.
While you're bringing this up, I'm just going to say the fact that you said Japanese culture always seemed alien to you, that is enough to be canceled for that.
I know. I know.
And in fact, in the knitting, that's what started the SJW knitting wars. Was there was a knitter who posted a blog talking about how she had always wanted to go to India. She had just gotten word that she was going to be able to finally go to India, and she was so excited. She felt like she had won a trip to Mars, and that was enough to destroy her. And the first of the SJW wars happened because of that. Because they said, they came in and said, if you say that something is alien or like winning a trip to Mars, that therefore that's racist because you're comparing people of color to alien. It's like, no.
Oh my God, they have no fucking clue.
No, it is alien. It's foreign. That's what that word
that's the
means.
whole point. Yeah, I mean.
Yes, I in my defense, I love Chinese food. I drive an Asian car. I love techno music. So
you're culturally appropriating something. I don't care.
Yeah. Is Cole there? Cole, you there?
Oh no, I think he dropped out.
Oh no,
he did. What did you want to show? I can pull it up.
Oh, can you bring in that email I sent you? There's a link that says Gundam video. Could you bring it up, please?
Yeah, but I'm gonna bring it up. But you should know, my internet seems spotty. Maybe that's why Cole dropped out.
I'm just gonna ask you to skip around anyway, so it's not gonna watch it. It's like a
okay, let's see. Hold on 1 second. Dun, 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 Keri does the tech. Okay.
Is it just me, or is Chris getting kind of like choppy?
Am I getting robot-y too?
We're probably all getting choppy.
No.
I don't know if it's on my end or not.
Would you say we're getting karate choppy?
Ah!
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Share. Now, if I share this, you're going to see all of my recent searches are true crime.
Oh, everybody say
What is it with women in true crime?
I don't know. It's like that's what I watch to relax. Okay, here we go.
You get along with my wife.
See if you can hear this.
and just skip around. There's no need. So they built a giant Gundam.
Yes, I did. I think that is so freaking amazing.
Yeah, this is awesome. So why can't we do
Wow.
something like this?
I just want to work.
I know.
I want people with giant fighting robots.
Yeah, it moves. Yeah, they show it light up at night when it comes in.
Can you see that?
Whoa! Yeah,
Is there a human in there operating that?
not in their suit. And look, he's taking a knee for George Floyd. Isn't that cool?
They gave him the woke chip.
Yeah, they actually have. There's this one. There's another one too. I don't think it's as big as that, but yeah, they have. I don't know. Japan's working on building giant fighting robots.
Yeah, see, I love those guys.
And so is Elon Musk, I bet.
But yeah, that was cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's just, I mean, that again, just very different culturally. It's also, I know we're not talking about this, we're talking about anime, but I am a fan of horror movies, and even the horror movies are different because of the culture so different. So
Yeah.
that whole genre of films where they have like the scary waif-like girl with the long hair and like The Ring, that is a very Asian kind of trope in horror movies.
Yeah.
Is the
A
very
lot. They're
style.
very kind of like ghost based, right? It's demons and ghosts. It's not like Europe. I mean, they have like some fantasy creatures, like the two-tailed fox or the 10-tailed fox or whatever. But a lot of it deals with demons and spirits.
Yeah.
And that's obviously that. There's a really fun. I want to say it's a PS2 game called Fatal Frame. And that the whole thing is that you're going around, you're taking pictures of ghosts in a nutshell. I mean, that's the oversimplified version of the story. But that game is scary as shit. I mean,
I'm gonna look that game up. Is it on the old Xbox 360?
It's PlayStation.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Not for me then. Yeah, that's very different because American horror, I think, is more like it's all the monster movies. It's and not the giant Mothra and robots and stuff. It's more of like the werewolves, the vampires, the zombies.
Yeah.
I think that's very like classic American horror. Culturally very different.
Yeah, even because you had The Grudge, which again was another remake, and back in, I guess it was like maybe early 2000s. Where they kind of got really big, and that's the thing that sucks about it. It shows you that how creatively bankrupt Hollywood has been for a while. Is that they would go in and they would find something and adapt it, and Hollywood got really big into adapting Japanese movies because The Departed is essentially a Japanese film, an Americanized version of a Japanese film, and the same thing with The Grudge and the other stuff that came out during that time period, which I'm totally blanking on. The Ring.
I know one. I think it was called Cell or something like it. My old client, Margaret Cho, was in it. It was a remake of an Asian horror. And I think it was like where the phone called you and then you died. And that was so.
Oh, I know one. Tu Wong Fu. Thanks for everything.
That's not a horror.
That's a good movie, though.
Yeah, well, it's still pretty scary seeing Wesley Snipes in drag.
I thought it was fucking hilarious.
Could they do that movie today, you think?
No. Not even close. They would have to get actual trans people to do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's exploiting. It's appropriation. Yeah. You guys, I'm going to have to wrap up a little early because I promised someone else I would come hang out on their show tonight. So any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of whipped out my anime collection of stuff I picked up recently, so I can recommend to people. Things that I've been watching, which is really good. I know this has been mentioned. Angel Cop is good.
Okay.
There's a really funny one. It's fantasy. It's called That Time I Was Resurrected as a Slime. It's pretty funny. There is also Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, which is again also really fun. I also like Appleseed, again big on the cyberpunk, and that's also from the creator of Ghost in the Shell. Of course, I do have Ghost in the Shell. There is also the Japanese anime for Witchblade, which was an American comic, which is also great. Overlord, which is another fantastic anime. It's again fantasy. It's about this guy from Tokyo that gets sucked into this fantasy world. Really good. Goblin Slayer, which is also very, very controversial because it has rape in it. Great series. Claymore. This is what I was initially talking to you about, Keri, when we were talking about anime a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And I recently picked this up. I haven't watched it yet. It's called Psychopaths.
Psychopaths. PASS.
Yeah, I like that. I like that
Yeah.
title.
And that's kind of some friends were telling me about it because I'm running my cyberpunk tabletop, and they were like, "You got to check out Psychopaths," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll have to do that."
What is that one about?
I'm not sure. I haven't watched it, but essentially, in a nutshell, is that you have these people that I think they're police, and they kill crazy people, but there's some people that get away with it because they have the psychopaths.
Okay. I that's one that would be in my wheelhouse. I hate that expression, wheelhouse, but
I picked it up a couple weeks ago, and I have not checked it out yet. Oh, Berserk. Berserk is good. You got to read the manga Berserk, and again, this is a cultural thing. The Japanese are really big on their rape for some reason, but
yeah, I think again, you could do a whole show just about like the strange cultural differences in the sexual part of like anime and Japanese culture in particular.
But it's the thing is, it's not just like they're exploiting women. I mean, that the whole thing with Berserk is Guts himself is raped as a child. It's they are not afraid to go there, right? That's the thing that I think that the SJWs don't like, is the fact that where here in the United States or in the West, we won't go there because they will get upset, right? Where the Japanese, they have zero fucks. They will go there.
Yeah, for a good story.
Yeah.
And life is like that. So let me do two more of these that I missed. 32 Flavors of Nickelweiser. What a great name.
Nick Weiser.
Oh, Nick Weiser. That was like Nickelback.
No.
Keri, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior Gilded? Hashtag 6th Division, long, hard, strong. What does that mean?
Okay. So my community has named themselves the Dix Division, thanks to Toxic Man Flu. And Gilded is like Discord, is a Discord replacement.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened. We were trying to get Tom to get on Gilded, and he kept refusing. And we turned into this whole joke about, have you heard about our Lord and Savior Gilded?
I see. So is that what you're using then?
Yeah, I use Gilded now. Yeah.
I'm not using any of those yet. It's too much for me to keep up with.
You definitely have to have some people willing to help you out. Toxic Man Flu has been doing a fantastic job. That's one of the things that we're trying to build is a Gilded community. And right now we have like 100 members within our Gilded.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, and Gilded sounds more like it's like you might get together at a Ren fair.
Yeah.
I like the name better than Discord. Okay. And last one, Incogcheeto, thank you, sir, says, not Death Note. I'm an SJW and fighting for equality. Do you support equality and inclusion? No? Well, I'm writing your name down.
Pretty much.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. I know you got something, Chris.
Yeah, one more. Are you able to share audio from a video?
Possibly.
It's a very short video.
Yeah. Is it in the
yeah, it's monkey guts.
Okay. Hold on, let me pull it up. because I had shut that tab. I'm sorry.
Because this is one of my favorite videos. It's bizarre, but it's weirdly soothing and comforting.
Okay, let's do this. Um, Thanks. That's what I need.
Oh, vamp. Yeah, we can probably vamp for Keri while she goes quiet. What a bunch of idiots.
Okay. What is this?
Oh, it's just great.
You have to unmute it, though.
Yeah, unmute it, please.
Aw.
I like what it says. Progress of sound continues, but what about mankind?
Is this a commercial?
It's originally a commercial, but they took the Guts theme, which Comix, you just mentioned the show. I've never watched the show, but the character named Guts, that's his theme.
Oh,
Did I get that right?
Great.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Comix, for spending time with us. Tell people where they can find you if they don't already know you.
Yeah, you can find me on the Twitters and the YouTubes at Comics Division. Tomorrow night, I have my stream Thursday Night Throwdown where I have Mike Evans of XRL7 on. If you haven't checked out X-LR7, go check it out. It is a pixel animated cartoon that kind of deals with like cancel culture, and it takes place in the future. It's about a fictitious band called XLR7. And it's good, really good. I'm really looking forward to talking to Mike. It's gonna be fantastic.
Cool. If you guys want to join the Dix Division, you can find him online.
I
was
trying not to laugh. Thank you guys again. If you want to check out the show, I'm going to be on in a little bit. It's the Shagsworth channel. Shagsworth is sometimes in our chat. You guys may know him. And I'll be there in just a few minutes. So thank you guys. We're going to go out on a video.